No, the traditional joke is that's the worst boy band ever, so we've done that. So I will now come to this young man down here who had the last question.
This one's to Jez. What's the latest on Elijah Ahui in Scotland? When's he coming back to play for the club? Because he was a fast little lad. Alika Ahui?
Alicia.
Alicia.
So
sorry, I can't pronounce it, sorry.
No. So he left the club. We've got a future interest in Alicia. He's now at Walsall.
Okay.
Yeah, so he'll...
That's brilliant, because when he played that cup game, he tore them apart, that particular game.
I think a point to make probably is where the football club is at the minute, trying to compete in a really high level and probably the toughest and highest quality League One for a long time, it becomes more difficult for players to come through from the academy. However, because of the club status and because of the funding that the club now receives, there are a number of players who can have professional football careers who come through our academy. They just might not be with Lincoln. So I think the fact that that's happened in the last couple of years and will continue to happen is a real credit to the football club. So we want them out playing for us, of course, but if not, and they're not at a level where they can compete to be in our team, what we can do is give them that opportunity to have a professional football career and us have a future interest. So Alicia will be similar to that.
Brilliant, that's fantastic. What I wanted to also ask whoever wants to answer this, are Lincoln going to be part of Sports Ground Safety Authority and the safety needs for the neurodiverse? Because the plans for the Real Mac, you have to told many of your membership about the plans, what you're planning in the Real Mac stand, and we'd like to know what they are too, and I would. I've got a question in here that any of you can answer, and it's anonymous, but that's from a person that couldn't make it tonight. So if any of you want to answer either of those questions or come back to me, please do.
Yeah, so I'll try and answer that, maybe pulling a few threads there. So one of the things that we've had to look at the football club is ultimately how we maximise our revenues, and that's not about trying to milk the fans or take from the fans. But what we've got to do in order to remain competitive is everything is linked. So, I know we want the cheapest possible match tickets. I know we want a 20-goal striker. I know we want various different things. But everything is related. So one of the toughest decisions, but one of the most important decisions that we've had to make is in around zoning the stadium, which you'll have seen as part of that. As part of that announcement. And the reason why we've done that is based on average attendance, based on average ticket price, we are we were the fifth lowest spend per head, purely on ticket prices in the league. And people may have heard me say this before, but that was because we had one of the lowest, highest price tickets and one of the highest, lowest price tickets. And that was because we just had a single zone pricing policy. So what we've had to do is we've just had to look at how we nudge this. So we've protected those fans that have had season tickets and tickets for a while, and that's why we've maintained no more than a Category B renewal price for those that are renewing. But we have had to look at how we segment and how we zone the stadium. Included in that is how we almost have two L shapes, effectively the Real Mac and the Green Lake stand, and then the co-op, and then when it's home games, the Stacey West element as well. Pausing that there, what we're also looking at is both home and away and how we improve our provision for those fans that have accessibility needs. And the challenge that we have there is that it's an older stadium, and when you compare ourselves to the modern stadium, so for example Shrewsbury, Doncaster been there a few years ago, or various different grounds, you have like raised platforms, raised seatings. There's also different areas within the ground where you have that provision. We don't have that at Lincoln City, and we know we don't have that at Lincoln City, but it is about ultimately proportionately trying to nudge this. We will spend over £350,000 on stadium infrastructure this summer. Part of that is stuff that we have to do, and part of that is stuff that we choose to do. And the challenge is we'd love to have 100 chocolate buttons, but the reality is we only have 30, and then we have to choose how are we going to spend and how are we going to spend that money that benefits the most people and proportionately impacts. So I can understand that I'm not able, and we're not able to delight everybody, and I understand that sometimes when we make changes, that disproportionately impacts more people than others. I'm not going to sit here and pretend and try and spin the life out that we don't. Hopefully what you can do is you can trust that we agonise over these decisions, and we're trying to do something in a way that helps keep the football club moving forward, helps continue to invest in our infrastructure, and also proportionately and fairly tries to generate and maximise revenues without it unfairly impacting people. Respect and understand the challenge around the win back and not allowing for next season to move into the fan village. We will be increasing the catering offering away from that, so there will be more options for people. Is it the most popular decision we have ever made? No. Do I think it's necessary? Do I think it's important? Do I back the decision? Yes, 100%. So apologies, that's not all great news. It's just candid, honest, and with the very, very best intentions for Lincoln City overall.
Yeah, because all of you, were you aware of the issues the disabled had at Birmingham City at the Cup game? Did it ever get fed back from the Reading Community Trust? We were treated like, and I was with David Cox, who unfortunately passed away last week. We were treated like dogs there. We were treated like, with no respect, and I know it's Birmingham City, but we were treated really badly, and the SOLO, and I got everybody running around. But were you aware of the problems that they had in that game particularly?
Yeah, look, we do get fed back match reports from away games, and look, hopefully, it's not for me to speak about other football clubs, but hopefully the one thing we can do well here is that we have a heart, we care about the fans, and wherever possible, our intent is always to give people the best possible experience. If we don't have the facilities, or sometimes we get it wrong, we accept that. But yeah, hopefully from Lincoln City's point of view, we do our very, very best to provide home and away fans with the best possible experience.
Could I ask why you're here for Saturday while everybody is here that's involved in the club? Can we do, at 60 minutes, give David Cox, who used to sit in the green bandstand with his mum and he passed away, at the 60th minute, a round of applause?
Yeah, absolutely. But this is, I think, one of the things that's really important. When you have fan initiatives, we believe it's really important that the fans lead that, do that for the fans, by the fans.
I've asked all for the groups, but I've also asked Alan to do it on Saturday, and he's willing to do that. Yeah. And I know some people will start to clap and applaud, and like we've done, and we don't have to do it to everybody, but everybody knows Little Dave. If you know him, he used to potter around, and he was Little David. If you know him, you've got Big Dave that comes here, everybody knows Little Dave. So if we can, please join in at 60 minutes. If you can't and you're doing something to do with the game or work and business, I understand, but that you will hear 60 minutes, at least 100 people clapping. Send them off. Thank you for your answers, being honest. Thank you.
Right, who's next? I've got some questions off the internet, but we would like as many as possible from you folks in the room.
Hello. I thought the statistics stuff in the computer was really interesting. Probably just a boring old git thinking it was good. But I just wondered, all teams have access to this, so could you not do something completely different to the team that you're playing? Because they'll be looking at this and thinking of it, and could you just, sort of, oh, they're supposed to do this, oh, they haven't done it. Just a thought.
Are you after my job? I think that's the tactics. So that's what, within this is the data that's given the evidence and what's going on, and it's reported in hindsight, isn't it? That's what data does, it gives you after the event, but the tactics are what makes the difference. So I'll give you an example. Birmingham rolled in their right back in the game on Saturday and hadn't done that all season. So that makes our press a little bit different. So within it, the pieces on the chessboard will give you the data of how you played the game, but how I move my pieces on the chessboard, or the coaches move their pieces on the chessboard, is what it's all about, isn't it? So underlying all the data is really lots of hard work and graft and tactical stuff.
Just to add one thing, it's interesting Michael used the analogy of chess, like football has become that. There is a proliferation of really, really intelligent and detail-oriented coaches who are really super tactical, and you're right, everybody has loads of information about everybody else, and that's why it becomes chess, because apart from the very top teams, there's not much to choose between players. There's not much to choose between games. The games are really tight. So the coaches try and affect the game by how they play. And that's the balance probably between creating identities to be what you want to be against anybody and tweaking and changing that tactically to try and expose or create problems for the opposition to be unpredictable as well. So that's Michael's job, and long may continue having it. And that's the challenge all the time for him, every 3 or 4 days. How much do you change for the opposition, and what are the opposition going to do to change for you?
Right, who's next?
All good, very quiet.
I'll come to you next. I'll go over to Margaret first because she's closer.
A question for Michael, please. Michael, this is no form of criticism.
There we start.
It's just picking your brain. I know it's getting later at night, but I'm sure you can. How on earth do you pick your team? Is it the team, the lads, because you've got some wonderful people there as well as great players? Is it because they've worked the best in training? Is it because they get on with each other? Or is it because you've chosen a team you think will actually beat the team that are coming to play against us? And if that's the case, I have to say, I wonder if it might help if we had the same team. Please, no more injuries. For 2 or 3 weeks, so we actually work together.
It's a good question. It's a really good question.
You're so nice.
That wasn't a criticism. That's the job, isn't it? Really. It's a really good question. So the elements that go into picking the team: definitely how well they're training. Definitely how well they're training. They all get on within reason, so don't worry about that. Like there's no falling outs going on there. The other things are the tactical things. So I've got one question about keeping the same team. I've got another question about changing things for the opposition. So it's interesting how it works. But then you're right, like the consistency is important with it. So getting the balance of the team is always I think a head coach's challenge. So to give you an example, Joe against Reading, against their fullback, beat him up. It was fantastic. But not many people might have thought that Joe playing out wide would have done a job like that. So that's the challenge. And when it goes well, you don't notice it. When it goes bad, everyone has an answer, right? But 100%, and I think that's the balance: finding consistency in relationships, finding the things that you want to improve in, and what you want to go against the opposition. And then the other element of it is the physical load. The game's getting faster, quicker. I can tell you how much they're running and when they're not running. So going Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, and sometimes there's changes that, I agree with you wouldn't change it, but I also know that the player can't cope with that next game or 90 minutes of that next game at the performance level that this league requires. So would I have made some of the changes from Crawley to Birmingham? No, could have kept the same team, but I also know that some players couldn't do Tuesday, Birmingham away without the ball a lot and then go again on Saturday. So it's getting the blend of that right. And there's fors and against both.
Thank you.
It's interesting, and I don't know if you'd know this, but we've used the second fewest number of players in the league of anyone this year. So it's a real challenge to try and play aggressively without the ball, and that when Michael's talking about that pressing and counter pressing, that's like hard physical work at the pace of the game and keeping the same team Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. That's the balance all the time. And finding players, you talk about injuries, we've actually been really good this year with injuries, even though every single injury that we do have is, when it's an Ethan or a Jack, it hurts us. But again, if you look at the availability numbers of our squad, it's been really, really high, and part of that is managing their load to not get them injured through fatigue injuries.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of that. So when James Collins came into the building, obviously everybody wanted to see him straight away and wanted him to play every game no matter what. But he hadn't played properly for like 300 minutes. Yeah, he played 300 minutes this season, so for a 34-year-old striker to go 90, 90, 90, 90, he would probably break down and then he'd be out for 7-8 weeks. That's the reality. So my job is also to try and manage those situations. Yes, he scored, and then he didn't start again, but then he came back on and scored. So it's trying to get the balance with that. If there were just robots, I think I could pick a really easy 11. But yeah, that's the challenge.
Right, we're going to come down to the celebrity front row.
Hi, I've just renewed my season ticket and I'm really proud to do so. But when I asked the club for last year what perks we get, like discounts with partners, the club couldn't tell me, and commercial. Why is that?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I think again, it probably just reflects where we are in terms of just the evolution of what we're trying to achieve. I guess there's still the reward platforms and the things that we've brought centrally. If there's something in our communication that we need to improve, I'll take that on board, and I'll make sure we do that more effectively based on your feedback. So thank you for that, and apologies that we weren't able to communicate that so clearly.
And if you want a Virgin Wines voucher, come and see me afterwards. I'll sort it out.
Tell you here as well, please.
You do realise there's 300 people here. Quick one from the internet. This is from Steve. What is the club's approach to the women's team? Is there any hope of them playing back in Lincoln again?
Bit of variety. Yeah, I mean, basically Lincoln City has had a women's team over the years, and then it went away, and then we built it up again. The game is on an upward rise, but the reality of it is that we have many choices to make. We've talked about the budget, we've talked about the losses, and we have to make choices. And you know, it would be wrong for us to basically over-invest in a women's team at the expense of the football team, the men's football team, at the expense of the business, etc., etc. But at the same time, we want to have a women's team. We want to have a competitive women's team, and we're looking for ways to do that. But again, you know, there's a lot of concern, let's say, within football, and I think we share it, that the women's game is developing in a way, and I mean as a business proposition, in a way that is making a lot of the same mistakes that the men's game has made. And if you look at what's happening at the higher levels, there's serious amounts of money being lost on women's football as well. So, you know, we have to be sensible about it, we have to be responsible about it. I think the question earlier tonight about can we sustain losses of the level that we've got now is that, you know, we're being as responsible as we can in a competitive environment, in a landscape that's changing. We played a team last Saturday that has actually, let's say, disrupted the league in the way that it's investing in its club, and they can do it, and that's fine, but it isn't actually just about promotion and relegation. It's about how it disrupts the whole league and the impact it has on clubs like us. And again, that doesn't make us victims, it doesn't make them right or wrong, it's just how it is. And again, all of those kind of things, I think, you know, point to a question about what clubs are doing with their women's football and how they're approaching their women's football and how is it going to be sustainable, etc., etc. And we're facing that challenge too. But of course, we'd like it as part of our club. We'd like to be competitive in what we do. But again, it's not really that straightforward. But it is on our agenda. We talk about it regularly in the board. We're looking for ways to improve the situation we're in at the moment because we're not happy with that. But again, the answer isn't simply to, like most things in life, is just throw money at it or get it wrong in our level of priorities, because then we'll just have problems elsewhere.
Thank you. Who's next?
Just
question about achievable targets, really. Lots been said about budgets over the last year, where we dropped from 12th to 19th, now up to 17th. Was it £2 million up to the 10th placed club? And looking at the league table at the moment, the bottom three sides, who may well go down, I guess are below us, and potentially Bradford and Notts County coming up again might well be above us, putting us down the table. We all want to be a top six side, but is that really an achievable target, do you think, now?
Yeah, so I'll throw to Jez and Michael as well in a moment in this, but I think the one thing I want to be really clear is we do not want to sit here and sound like we're making excuses, because we're not. I think what we're trying to do is contextualise the situation and try and share our lens and our perspective. But let's be really, really clear. We are as an ambitious group of people, and we want to remain an ambitious football club and look up. But the scale of the challenge gets harder and harder. Now, what we would say is, whether we're 17th, 19th place budget, whatever, we don't think we have the 17th or 19th place squad. And part of what we try and do is work with the development model in terms of bringing players in, longer term contracts, working through that development journey. That's one strand of what we're trying to do. There's the commercial strand of what we're trying to achieve. So there are various things at play that hopefully, ultimately, enable us to be a club that is looking up the football pyramid rather than looking down. And again, without any hint of defensiveness, the only thing that we want to share, and the reason why we maybe at times labour that point, is that we want to over-communicate so you can come on that journey with us. You know, Michael and the team, and look, let's not make this taboo. We all hear the groans, the moans in the stands. We all hear the frustration, sometimes, and more often than not, rightly so. But as context, we're still one of the best teams in the division for point per game, cost per point. So the actual cost it achieves to get the points on the board, we're one of the highest performing teams. Now, if we stand here and put that outside the front door, we know the groans, we know the moans, and we know what you're going to think. You're going to think we're trying to defend ourselves. We're absolutely not, but it's just about that context. We're ambitious, we're realistic, and we desperately want you with us in order to pull all forces at Lincoln City together and push us up the football pyramid. And that's the bit that we're probably dancing on a bit of a pinhead in how we're trying to communicate that. So it's not excuses, it's contextual, but so you can come with us on that journey, knowing that suits at football clubs speaking about budgets and various other things aren't really what you want to hear. You know, football clubs about the players, it's about the coaching staff, and of course it's about the fans. So hopefully that answers the question. But yeah, Jez, I don't know if you.
It's a really fair question. The tough thing about where the budget is the quantum to the teams below us is so much smaller than the quantum to the teams above us. So it's not really the league position that matters so much, it's just the gap. But I agree with what Liam says. Like, it doesn't mean we roll over and die and give up at all. We believe we've got a better squad than 19th or 17th. How do you do that? And this isn't about ego or somebody having a plan. This is the club strategy. The only way for us to sign players under value is that players come here at the early part of their careers, mostly pre-peak, because if you want to go and sign someone who's 26 to 30 years old at the absolute best moment in their career, they are going to go for the highest money. So we won't get the best of those players, we'll get the worst of those players for this level. I think that's when you get in trouble and you end up being in the bottom four. So we're going to try and sign players pre-peak. That means we won't get every single one of them right. Sometimes they'll take a little bit of time to bed in and develop, and you'll ask questions, I'm sure, about individuals that haven't done that so far but are on longer term contracts, and that's the thinking behind those contracts. So we have to take some calculated risks, not reckless, but some risks, because I think if we don't do that, you end up eventually regressing, and the one thing you want to guarantee that doesn't happen, which is to end up in the bottom four, almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because the strategy takes you in that direction. So we have to be strong about how we want to be. We have to be strong about our model. We have to sell players at the right optimal time. Imagine that for Michael. We had the best goalkeeper in the league last year. But he came on a free transfer. Therefore, he would only sign a 2-year contract. Therefore, we have an absolute choice. And he leaves for nothing. And not just nothing, no future interest in him. he's probably one of the best goalkeepers in the Championship this year. So if he's to go in a year's time, 2 years' time, that might be 1 year where we don't make quite such a big loss because we might get quite a chunky percentage of a very, very, very big number. So we have to not just think about the transfer fees that we get on selling, but also future interest in players. And the more we sell, the more future interest we have, the more we're just backstopping for the club financially, hopefully, money that enables us to continue to be competitive. So answer to your question is, number one, I think we have to be really brave and clear in our strategy and take criticism, but know we're doing it for the right reason. I think we also have to excel at everything that doesn't cost money, and there's a lot of those things in football. So we can run hard, we can be honest, we can sign good characters, we can engage you all, because let me tell you, most managers when they come in the office after the game would say, tough place to come this, and that's because of you. So we've got to make sure that what we give you in terms of performance and the type of team that we put on the pitch and the identity and what that looks like really, really engages you, because that becomes then an intangible benefit for us that coming here becomes really difficult for opponents, and we can get points because of that. So yeah, over-indexing on things that don't cost money and be really clear of our strategy so that we can keep overachieving.
Right, who's next? I'll go to the back and then I'll come to you.
Thank you. Following on from those very comments, player sell-on strategy is a fundamental part of the club for the reasons all you've just said. So I suppose my question is, sort of how many players do we have currently with sell-on clauses? What's the significance and the expectation of the top team up there today, and will it make any significant contribution as we move forward to, I suppose, leverage the club forward, but also to offset any losses?
So without going into detail about individuals, I would say to you that there is just as much negotiation over the quantum of the percentage sell-on and the terms of the percentage sell-on as there would be the upfront payment. Because we're really aware that there's always a market value for a player. So we might have our valuation, but there'll always be market value as well. And you know, more than one club wants your player, that can increase that market value. But we won't give our players away under any circumstance, even if that means they end their contract with us, they're over 24 years old, they're free to leave on a free, because we can't look weak in the market, we can't look like a soft touch when we're negotiating. So we'll always be tough in those negotiations. But the percentage sell-on is a massive thing for us, especially with younger players, because it is often the move after the first move, or even the subsequent move after that, that gives you more revenue than the upfront payment on the first transfer. And I think the job of the club that has, well, probably exponentially risen over the last 5 or 6 years is the number of players now that we do have a future interest in. Some of those might be young Alicia, some of those might be players that have come through the academy, but some of those will be the more higher profile players like Harry Toffolo, like Lass, like Lucas, that we believe have got the ability to go to another level once they leave us. So that becomes a continual income stream potentially for the club into the future.
In terms of recruitment, are we still looking at the more untapped market? So are we now kind of coming closer to home? Obviously we've had Eric come in, and obviously I guess it's been quite a challenge to get him minutes and into the team.
Yeah, again, really fair question, and we discussed this quite a lot, and I'll let Michael touch on Eric in a second. I think, like everything, we can't allow something that hasn't gone perfectly well to stop us looking, because the strategy behind it is correct. Like, we know this is a really inflated market in England, but even more so in League One this year. I'll give you the number, it's like excluding Birmingham, wages across the whole league combined are 58% higher this year than last. That's quite a big jump, that's a big inflation. So there's certain players with certain qualities that we just can't find and afford in this country, in the markets that everybody else is looking in. So we do have to continue to look overseas. We do invest in data. So we had a meeting today about this. There's a few players flagged up, and we're not trying to sign a player who has the same attributes and the same level of players that we could get in our own domestic market, because then the reward wouldn't justify the risk of them coming from an overseas country, and more so a league that isn't the same as League One. Like Eric at times has wondered what he's come to be honest, when you look at some of the games that, yeah, the ball's not on the floor very much, there's not so many patterns as he would have experienced in the leagues he's played in. So because of that physicality and because of the adjustment required, we've got to make sure that we're signing players who can be game changers or are really undervalued, or players that we think have got a future exponential value to be able to sell and then justify that risk. But it is something we need to look at. Just one add to the question. It doesn't help us either. We only have 2 places. The Championship has 4. So what that does is then that deflates the market in terms of the Championship looking to buy players out of League One. So it's a bit of a double whammy for us. Number one, we're curtailing what we can do, but because the Championship have got more freedom to do more of those players, they're often, for the same reasons, we're looking cheaper than domestic players, so it deflates the marketplace that we're trying to sell our players into, so that's most unhelpful.
Yeah, I think Eric's an interesting one, because I think probably we all want it to happen quicker in terms, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I think that's the reality with players transitioning. So players transitioning from Europe, like Jez mentioned, it's a slightly different style, direct, modules, all the things that we see in League One from time to time. But that doesn't, for me, mean Eric's not got ability and got potential and is going to be a good player for us. And then a little bit with Eric, he probably could have given him more time. I could probably give him more time and more minutes. I think everybody, might agree with that. But then, over Christmas, Eric was really poorly for quite a bit of time. And then he's come back and got injured, and then we have to build him up again. So, I don't think we can judge with young players, and with players that come in from abroad in the same way that we can judge trusted League One Tom Bayliss that's been playing in it for 4 or 5 years and knows the game, been every ground going. I think we have to be a little bit more patient with the young players and the foreign players. And even though Eric might be a bit older, it's definitely different for him. And let's be honest, it's the first time he's lived away from home in his life, and all those types of things that human beings deal with, that we see behind the scenes. So I don't think we just got to give them a bit more time, and hopefully Eric can get going again, and we can see the quality that he's got.
Hello again. On those statistics, do they produce anything to do with referees and linesmen?
What a question!
I'm sure we've all sat here and wondered what the bloody hell's happened.
Yeah, that's about every 5 minutes in a game, I think. Statistically, no. I've never seen anything statistically in terms of the data, but I'm sure it will come. There you go, there's an idea. But we do report, and you get the clips, and we're always reporting back, and you have to report referees and what they're doing, and it's a hard job. Everyone knows that's a hard job, and you need them in the game. But the reality is, there's a lot going on in games like you've seen at set pieces that make it difficult, and sometimes the referees do make it a little bit on a knife edge. One of the statistics we get is ball in play time. So I'm really interested about ball in play time because it's a real big thing for us. So again, we like to play fast, quick, aggressive. We've got young players that, and I want the ball in play a lot, because older players who are a bit, slower, should we say, don't want the ball in play a lot. So, I know that where we've had ball in play a lot, we've been really successful, and I know we've played against other teams that have slowed it down and which, is part of the game. If we're winning, we'll do it. It's just management of that. So, I've not seen any overall statistics, Liam. I don't know about you.
So a couple of really quick things. So first of all, the PGMOL, so that's the organisation that provides referees to the Premier League, to the EFL. Key match decisions are getting better, statistically proven. And in fairness, so Howard Webber's come in as Chief Refereeing Officer. I think he's been there for about 18 months now. And in fairness to Howard, I think it's fair to say that he inherited a legacy of problems and issues and things that were maybe systemic. And I've been really impressed with what Howard, Martin Glenn, and all the team at the PGMOL are trying to do in order to drive it forward. But a bit like anything, when there's a new sheriff in town, I think there's years of unpicking and various things to do. So part of what a challenge has been presented to the game at the moment is how do we fund referees, what does that look like, what are the expectations. But I think with Howard Webb, he's think I'm allowed to say this, his daughter goes to the University of Lincoln, he doesn't live far from here, he's very accessible, he's very open, he's very transparent. I just think we've got to back Howard and his team and give them time in order to get it right, because it's not something that you fix overnight. These are decade-old problems. It's not good enough, the standard hasn't been good enough for years, but actually going forward we have to have optimism that Howard and his team are going to get it right. And in fairness, if we want to look at it on a one-year cycle, key match decisions are in theory higher and better than last year, so it's trending in the right direction.
Next up.
Thank you. The current crop of academy scholars, have we got high hopes? Have we got any hidden gems?
I'll let Michael talk about an individual in a second, or a couple of individuals, but we're in the process now of making decisions on who might be offered what. There's a really good group, did really well in the FA Youth Cup, really unfortunate to lose on penalty kicks to Plymouth, who then went away and beat Everton. So there's a bit of a marker of what the level was, and we watched those games, and particularly the Bolton away game was a really high quality game for two League One teams with Category 3 academies. So there's a number of players that we've now got to make decisions on. It's a really good year group. It happens sometimes where you get 4 or 5 in one year group. They don't particularly come in a linear format where they're spread over a period of time. So we've got some good young players in our academy, but certainly the second years who you'll have seen in the FA Youth Cup definitely deserve a mention in terms of like how many they are, and they're the decisions we've got to unpick now to do the right thing. And part of that is the question you had earlier, which was around, it's so hard now to get a pathway to our first team. You know, don't underestimate what Freddie, what Jovan and what Sean have achieved. That's so tough, and they've all had different routes. You know, Fred had to go on a couple of loans. Sean got into the team very young, then came out of the team, couldn't find a way back in, went out on loan, came back, played a year at wing back, even though it's not his position, just to get some minutes. And Jovan, apart from a brief, I think day out he had in Brackley, I think, rather than a loan, when he finally got there once. We've managed to like drip feed him into the team without really using a loan of any note, and so all about different pathways, but it's so difficult to transition. And it would be equally difficult if we have an under-21s group. Like, if we had an under-21s team, we'd be spending a lot of money for very small outcomes. And as David said earlier, got to pick where you spend your money and how effective that is. So, tough to get there, but we've got some boys that have a real chance of being professional footballers, and we just need to make sure that we're the right club for their pathway, that it gives them the best chance of doing that, and we'll then make decisions on that basis.
Yeah, I think we've got some good young talent. And as Jez says, I think it's really important how we deal with that and nurture it. For me, there's 3 key aspects to it, which I was speaking about today. One is, will they play for our first team? That's one aspect. Second is, are they going to transition into professional football, which is easier said than done? And then, can we support them with a pathway? Is it in the first team? Is it going out on loan and coming back? Is it staying with us and playing the cup games, have you seen, and then going out on loan? Like, how we do that is really important, because the last jump for these young players coming through the game is the hardest, because it's age group, it's pyramid, and then it becomes, oh, we're in the big wide world with all the senior pros and James Collins and all those players. So it's always the hardest jump is the last one, and that's coming from Nolan's work with lots of good young talent over the years. But I think you probably know this as a club. I'm really believing young youth and young talent, and we have them up in the training ground quite a bit. The youth players will play against the first team, and I see them quite a bit. But you know, you saw Zane against Manchester City, and we'd like to play Zane more. And you saw probably Boller, how well he's doing, and even Charlie Parks is injured at the minute, but he's been up with our first team, who's done well in his age group. But the challenge is always like getting in the minutes with the first team. And if I'll share a challenge with you, which is the amount of subs I have. You know, if I had more subs, I think you'd see more youth, and they'd get the opportunity. So in the Premier League, they have 10 substitutions. I don't have that ability. So we always have to cover the bench with, if their centre half goes down, if a midfielder goes down, if a striker goes down. But for sure, you know, we definitely want to invest in our youth. But again, the reality of the industry, you have to be good enough. And that's the challenge. It's you have to be good enough to play at the level, and don't underestimate you know, how good League One footballers have to be. They're good footballers, all of them. I promise you, they're all good. They don't look like it sometimes, I know, but trust me, it's, you know, they're all good top footballers that have got a career.
Maybe just one thing I forgot to say there. One real advantage of not having that under-21s group that keeps another group, is you're not giving people false hope at 18 who haven't really got a chance, but you're keeping them for the sake of putting a team out. But the other thing is, the best ones get fast-tracked really quickly into the first team environment, and that is massive for their development. If you wanted to probably equate the biggest way players improve is the environment they're in, the level they're playing against. So for someone like Zane, who's been training pretty regularly with our first team throughout the season, that would be so valuable for his education, to have that demand, the tempo, the quality, the demand of being in and around the first team every single day. So that's a big thing that we can do, and with Michael being so open that those players come up regularly, that's definitely played a massive part in their development this year.
And Zane's is he at Bournemouth at the minute?
Yeah, it's nice this time of year, he said, and to get a bit of sunshine.
What's the situation? Is he...
Yeah, so we did this with Sean Rowan a few years ago. We just have, because of the aforementioned issue, no under-21s group, once we get knocked out the FA Youth Cup, which is usually much earlier in the year, at that point the youth team being a unit stops being a focus. So that's the one competition we try and go as far as we can in, try and win as many games as possible. So we then have a responsibility to try and find those boys the best possible games programme for the rest of the season that gives them the best chance of what comes next. Now, the type of player Zane is, we felt rather than trying to find a non-league club at whatever step that might not be the best for his development at this stage of his career, 17 years old, if we could find a work experience arrangement, that's the technical term for it, that he's allowed to go on while he's still on scholarship forms. Sean did that with Southampton and Chelsea while he was a scholar before he signed his pro contract. That's exactly the same we've done with Zane. So contractually we're protected as a club, but it's a brilliant experience for him, gets him some games in a different level, and he'll come back to us, and then hopefully we're in a position between now and the end of the season where you get to see him on a pitch in a League One game.
So you've sent him there, or did they come for him?
We work with his agent, we talk about what could the games programme be. Actually, do you know what, it might be a better opportunity for him to go and find a good club to go and play some under-21s football in for a period of time, rather than us try and find a non-league loan. So that was us working with the agent, if you're probably initiated by us originally, and then trying to find the right club, the right opportunity, and yeah, he'll be there for 4 weeks, and then he'll be back with us.
Quick one around the football governance bill. Is there anything at all happening with that, and how difficult it is to plan multiple potential futures for what the club looks like?
Yeah, the football governance bill has been quite a story in itself, because it didn't start, 5 months ago. It started 2 or 3 years ago, and so it's slow progress. And I think it's fair to say that we've reached the point where actually we don't really factor into our thinking. There was questions earlier about our strategy and our planning, etc. If you'd have asked us 2 years ago, we'd have said we're planning that actually we will see a redistribution of some of the wealth that football generates, and we would be able to factor that in some way, given a certain time frame. We've kind of changed our view on that because there's been lots of ups and downs and lots of nearlies and maybes. I think it's fair to say that the EFL and the Premier League are still talking to each other and still trying to get a deal done because there's the threat of a regulator to come. It's again, don't bank on it, and it might take a regulator with backstop powers, which is what's happening at the moment. The bill is still going through Parliament. I think it's in the latter stages of the Lords, and then we'll pass to the Commons, and then hopefully we'll get into a future kind of framework where it's starting to be enacted. The shadow football regulator is in place, and they are building up a department. DCMS Ministry are building up a department or building up an organisation so that when it is all ready to go, that they just need to appoint a regulator, and then the whole thing they'll be ready with that organisation to get going. But again, planning for it and expecting something really is not where our head is at the moment. But it is believed it will happen, but as I say, nobody can quite say when. One of the things that's changed in football, I get to join Liam and a couple of weeks ago Clive at the EFL meetings, and I came away from that meeting thinking we covered more about business than sport at that meeting. And I think for me that was a significant change when I looked at the agenda, when I looked at the topics, when I looked at actually where all the engagement was. A lot of it was to do with business and not with the actual sport, football. So you can see what's happening there, and you can see what's happening with the Premier League. They're actually spending money in court against each other. So there's a lot more litigation going on in football. So it's not going to be smooth sailing, there's going to be a lot more turbulence. And as I say, what we have to do is make sure we're not relying on something like that we have, as Jay was talking about earlier, we budget well, we budget responsibly, we plan well, and then the final thing is to try and execute well.
Yeah, just following up on that, Liam, you touched on during the AGM that, and it's been in the national press this week, there was a meeting at which we were represented, I assume as yourself as the EFL League One representative probably, with Premier League clubs, with a view to trying to get a deal negotiated before a regulator's appointed. Was that initiated by the Premier League or by the EFL? And can you tell us a little bit as to how it went, please? You can't, obviously.
Yeah.
It's not very often you're speechless, Liam.
So, look, I think it's really important that, so when you come to work at a football club, or you're part of an ownership of a football club, or wherever the one thing you have to respect is that you're a custodian of that football club and you're a custodian of the game. And football is a shared asset. Football isn't owned by X person, Y person. It's owned by the fans, it's owned by the communities, and you have the other thing we have to recognise is, if you look at the voting rights, for example, in the Premier League, there are several clubs in there that haven't, in the history of the Premier League, have spent less time in there than clubs that are out of it. For example, Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough have spent more time in the Premier League than, I think, than 25% of the current members. But yet, because the roundabout has stopped now and the voting rights are locked in now, you have this situation where, depending on your current membership, that gives you the right to say and sway football forward. So I think it'd be really unfair of me to talk about, meetings or possible meetings that are, private conversations, but our role is to act as a responsible custodian of football, not just for Lincoln City, for all of the game. But the challenge is, I don't think everybody sees it that way, and equally, as David says, this is probably no longer a sport and is more over a business, and that's sad to see to some degree, but we have to be accepted. We can't bury our heads. So what I would say, without commenting on the specific, I think, and we believe as a football club, and I know there are many other colleagues in the EFL that think this way, we have a responsibility as custodians of football, as the game is a shared asset, in order to find a way to better construct this industry. If we were to start from dot now with a new commercial model, a new set of rules and regulations, you would not design it how it is at the moment. The cliff edge between the Premier League and the Championship that requires parachute payments, quite candidly, you need parachute payments to stop these entities going bust in order to have a competitive Premier League. You just have to look at the Premier League now. It's less competitive than it's ever been, personal opinion. Teams at the bottom are teams are coming straight up, straight down. You're looking at the bottom 3 teams further, or bottom 4 teams further away than they have been. So you've almost got like a top 16 as it is at the moment in time. So something's not quite right in how it's constructed, and it's all of our responsibility to try and get that right. And whether I'm in meetings or not in meetings, whether it's our voice or other people's, what I would share with you is there's some really, really good people in football, like some proper people that you would be really proud of, that are working really hard in order to try and find ways to stitch the game back together in a better way, albeit we don't always have the teeth, because the roundabout has stopped and we might not be in the power seats at that moment in time. But rest assured, whether it's us or whether it's not us, I assure you there are some proper good people trying really hard, and between us all, over the course of time, I'm sure we will chip away at this, and maybe with or without government intervention, maybe make a dent in this, but it ain't going to be a quick fix, I'm afraid.
No, I wouldn't expect it to be, but I think it's good news that you're still talking with the Premier League. There's still some discussions going on. I would take that. I'll take that as a positive. And also, the regulator, part of his responsibility, touching on what David said earlier, would be to sort out the women's game as well, with the financial side of it. So the regulator's going to have a lot on their plate when they're appointed. I just want to say what a fantastic forum it's been tonight, and the format of it, again, just gets better and better, and it's just shown by how many people are here this evening, because some people say fans forums are dying, but they're not, and the audience here proves that. It's been a brilliant night, and thanks for your transparency and answering the questions to the best of your ability.
Thanks, Tony.
Quick question from William Mitson. Will Oxen remain kit suppliers next season?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's my type of question. I like that. That's my type of answer as well, actually. Liam, a man of few words. One lady down here.
Question for Michael. What do you find the most challenging part of your job?
You've got an hour.
2 people to the right of me, can I say that? Finishing the brownies that you make, actually. Most challenging part? Oh, that's a good question. I think every day's challenging. It's quite exciting every day. Winning. That's the hardest part in football, winning. We all want to win, we all want to be successful, but it takes a lot to win a game of football in a low-scoring game, which is a bit random, even though we've got stats and we're using human beings. And I've listened to a lot of business tonight, but they're not a tin of beans on a shelf that are exactly how they were the next day, because they're humans. So getting the best out of people is the best challenge and the hardest challenge. And in moments when it's going great, everyone sees that. Moments when it's not going so great, you have to pick up the pieces and try and fix it. I use the analogy all the time with coaching and head coaching. Lots of people can break down in a car and tell you they're broken down. Fixing it's the hard part, and that's my job really, to put things right when they're going wrong. But I think that's the beauty of it. You've got to love human beings. You've got to love progression. You've got to love seeing the youth. You've got to love trying to build something. But there's no doubt, winning in football is always the hardest bit.
Down here.
What is your thoughts on social media and how you protect your families and young players?
Myself?
You,
and young players. Yeah, I'm not on it, which is probably because I'm not sure I need to be on it. But it's an interesting one, because I think with I always find it really interesting, because my job is probably to take the flak for the players. If that means I have to do it, I have to do it. That's part of the job, and I think us as managers know that when we get into it. And when you're unhappy, I'm fine. If you direct it at me, fine. I don't like it when it's directed at players, I'll be honest. I don't like that. Whether that's right or you agree with that or disagree with it, because I don't think there's any benefit to digging out the lads when they are running and trying as hard as they can. But that's the reality. But they're out there, you're in the arena, and that's what they do. So I think it's an interesting world, and it's a world we live in. And to say that the players don't look at it and read it and all that sort of stuff would be false, because they do. I will tell you one thing though, the Premier League players aren't, they've got people that manage it for them, and they go nowhere near it, and they've got a lot of money on it. But players of our level probably do. So, but we have to be realistic, and we have to be. It's part of the industry that we now live in. It's part of the industry that I think the world lives in. The young players coming through it know it, and they can cope with it more so than people think. And sometimes they might react in the wrong way. But no, but we try and support them. We do lots of work behind the scenes and to try and support them through how, you know, social media and all those types of things. And they have Professional Footballers Association that comes in and talks to them about these types of things, because it is a different world that we're living in with social media. But it is the world we need to develop in. And I always say to the players, it's, you know, no offence, but when 5,000, 10,000 or youth players with a few hundred people are unhappy, if you want to make it, you're going to have to go in front of 100,000 at Old Trafford. That's part of learning as well. And I think that's part of the young players learning, when they come on the scenes and all of a sudden you throw Zayn into a stadium and there's 5,000 people watching. Don't underestimate how hard that is for the first time, and the pressure on that young lad. That's part of coping. It's not just part of coping with the game, it's part of coping with the industry.
Yeah, I just don't think you know what comes with the territory, so if you don't want criticism, don't go looking for it, and that's what social media is, so keep away from it. That's for me. I think people underestimate how much we want to win and we want to be successful for you. Like, we understand the role, we understand the responsibility, weighs heavy. There's no arrogance about that whatsoever. Privileged to work in football, privileged to be in a position where if it goes well, you can make a lot of people really happy. And we know that the flip of that is we can ruin weekends as well. So that's a big responsibility that we think about all the time. And we hate losing. We might not show it. Like, I don't think you'll see us breaking down on our seats at the end of a game. Doesn't mean inside it doesn't feel like that. But we have a role to play. We're in leadership roles, so we can't walk around looking like that. So we have to put a front on, and we're actors on the stage, to be fair, in front of people on match days. But it doesn't mean to say that you don't get away and it doesn't do exactly the same for us. Ruins weekends, and yeah, you can't. You just become resilient to it, because that's the only way. And you have to teach that resilience to players. I think we have to create an environment. We talked about it the other day, of really wanting the EPC to be like that one sacrosanct place where the players know they are safe, and that we can create a real high challenge environment, high demand environment, but a really supportive environment as well. And we can be really, really consistent with our behaviours, so that they know that we're never as good as everyone thinks we are when we win, and we're never as bad as everyone thinks we are when we lose. But yeah, social media is a challenge. We have to look after players. I think, you know, when we're talking about young players and youth team players, let's be totally clear. Even our most experienced players are really young. I look at that sometimes and think, Christ, like, they're 30 whatever years old, they're still so young. So it's an environment where there's a lot of young men who are striving to achieve something in their careers, and we have to really, really support them with not just social media, but how they live their lives, decisions they make, and making sure that they retain some level of like consistency and context to everything. I think the frustration at the moment it happens in stadiums, everybody gets that. Everybody understands that. I think it's the premeditated, nasty, abusive stuff online. That is the stuff, unfortunately, that's the world we live in, that you have to try and avoid it, because it is there and you see it. I go on Twitter accounts to get post-match interviews from managers of different clubs to listen and see what's going on, and to keep an eye on different things and learn about games. And some of the reaction on there when you scroll down the comments is incredible, like not in a good way. So yeah, I don't know if that answers it, but keep away from it if you don't want to know, because you know what's there, but try and protect the players and educate the players and help the players and support them as much as possible.
Now, no fans forum will be any good without a question from Cornell, so we've got that to look forward to after this young lady down here.
Thank you. So last year you did a really good job of humanising the players. There was lots of stuff on social media, we were at the training ground, questions and answers and things within Q&A. This year there's been barely anything. What's the reasoning for all that then?
Yeah, good call. So I think, well, first of all, we've had a change of personnel, like within the team. I think Luke, who leads the team, does a really good job of kind of telling stories. I think this week we were even seeing there was some stuff out about ahead of the Grand Prix, some of the boys choosing their pick, and was it Freddie thought where was it? Jack Doohan was going to win the Australian Grand Prix, so we might be humanising him, but not making the best choices there, is it? No, you're right. One of the things that we are, we actively try and do is just break down that barrier, and one of my favourite days of the year is the junior takeover, which is coming up quite shortly, where we'll all be shadowed by a junior, and we'll have the junior announcers in the stadium, and the junior referees and various other things. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't think there's been a deliberate step back from doing that, but ultimately you definitely are the judge and jury. We'll take that as feedback. But yeah, we definitely just want to tell the stories of our young men. Build those relationships. And do that not just online but offline. And I've got to say one thing, and I know I'm biased, but our lads are incredible at the community visits, not just the volume that they do, but how they engage. We often ask them to go to visits and spend half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour there, whatever the scheduled time to be there. And they're often there for double or even treble the time, genuinely engaging, genuinely committed. And that comes down to characters, and it comes down to the disciplines that Michael distills in the dressing room and at the training ground. But I also think it shows from them a commitment to being as part of this club. But on the flip of that, that's because you guys, when you're meeting them, when you're interacting, you're making them feel safe, you're making them want to be there. So it is a two-way process. So thank you to you guys, but feedback noted. And Luke, there's a little action point for us there to take away. So thank you.
Troubles with NPA announcers, Liam, they're all too good.
Yes.
Can we not have a senior takeover day?
We've got it!
On the pitch or off the pitch?
The coach.
Being Jez. How about being Jez for the day?
Don't do that. I don't recommend it.
Right, here we go. Cornell. Now, 15 sides of foolscap, but this is a good one. I like this one. Will we see Joe Agana come back to the club on a loan spell next season? That's from Cornell. Fair enough. Say any more, Bruce?
This is a question for Liam. On transparency, you mentioned about the board meeting and transparency. Will there be transparency on when people's opinions with relating to things that have taken place be transparent going forward? Because there have been apologies to some people that there's been a conflict between players, family and fans, and issues were being treated like a two-tier sponsorship. We went to the sponsorship and one of my colleagues came along and we were ignored. We were treated by the commercial team really badly. We walked away. We both suffered with mental health. And when the player never came over, who's been sponsored for a fair amount of years, we both left. I wanted to sponsor a player, and the outgoing commercial gentleman said, "You can meet this player anytime." A comment was made about it, and it was brought to the attention of somebody at the club, and he was invited without 24 hours notice, and wasn't said that there would be a legal representative. And going forward, this person that has been sponsoring the club when he took over a site has been treated as a second-class sponsor and may take the business elsewhere, and he's been put in 30 grand over the years, and the newer sponsors have been treated a lot better. He is threatening to take his business elsewhere because it's not fair. He wants a fair apology, well, like apologies have been given to other people, and being transparent about it. You do it on a case-by-case basis, and a recent one was resolved with an apology. This person will continue to be a sponsor and be there for the club and support Lincoln City, but at the moment he's going elsewhere, and this question has come because it's never been discussed fairly with this gentleman, and obviously transparency. He'll welcome an apology. He'll continue to be a season ticket holder and sponsor your left back.
So first of all, as a football club, we don't always get things right, and maybe I've got a reputation for being a politician at times. So look, I'm going to be really candid with you and just say I know the incident that you're talking about. I don't think it's something that we talk about.
No, I know
130 people,
Yeah.
but categorically, I disagree with how it's been framed. I'm not accepting the accusation that's been labelled against the club staff. We have people there. I just think that's framed really wrongly. So, let's not have this conversation in public.
Let's have it elsewhere then. If I'm happy, I will.
As a football club, what I will say is, I think over my 7.5, 8 years that I've been here, when we've got things wrong, which we do on occasions, I think I have a reasonable track record of putting our hands up and acknowledging that we get things wrong. So, taking this matter as above, I assure you that we look ourselves in the mirror and we strive to do everything that we can for all our fans, all our stakeholders and everybody involved in the football club. I am sorry, we do get things wrong on occasions, but it's never done with intent other than to try and do the best.
No, because I wanted to sponsor, and with the way that it said you can turn up any time, that player can come and see you any time, and that person took a lot to turn up in all the years that he sponsored. And when you suffer with mental health, it's hard to get out that door when the black dog's at you. But thank you for taking that on board. Thank you very much.
Right, time for 2 more questions. Who's got the first one?
This is one for Michael. What is the thought process about playing certain players out of position? For example, like House has sort of played further into midfield and on the wing sometimes this season. And we've also heard sort of publicly on radio that Rico Hackett is sort of wanting to play further up on a wing rather than a wing back, but has sort of had to do it to sort of, help the team out. So what is the thought process? Is it more of a sort of make do sort of, or is it sort of based on statistics and athletics to sort of make sure the right players are playing in the right places to get the best out of the team?
Good question, I suppose. First of all, they're footballers and they're paid to play where we think they need to play. So last season, Rico Hackett played as a left wing back and we were winning games and did very well. Every player matched the data. So, for example, when Rico's playing as a left wing back on a piece of paper, the game moves, the game changes, it's fluid, it doesn't look like a piece of paper. So a lot of his data when he's playing left wing back, he's not actually playing left wing back, he's playing like high left, because we swing from a 5 into a 4 in the way we do it. So there's a lot of tactical nuances behind it. So he is playing as a winger, but he starts on a piece of paper as a wing back, if that makes sense. So there's lots of different nuances that work around it. And again, come back to the situation where, you could argue that Jovan is a number 9, but sometimes he plays as a right midfielder and has a really good game, and when it goes well, everyone goes, wow, what a great game. And there's other times when he's played as a number 9 in his normal position and hasn't had a good game. So I think there's lots of different metrics around it, but for sure we always try and get the players in the best position for their availability, with all the different contexts to take into account. There's even other things like we're really good at set pieces. So you get another tall, strong individual on the pitch to make you another head. So a lot of teams will bring 3 centre halves against us, not just to play as a back 5, but also to try and deal with our set pieces. So they might be a back, Bristol Rovers have been a back 4 most of the season, and I think they'll come with a back 5 and come with a back 3. So it changes quite a bit in that sense.
Just add one more thing for you, just as an insight. So, probably talked about the second half of last season. I know Michael didn't come to the club thinking we're going to play 3-5-2. That evolved because of a run we had between when you arrived and January, and looking at the group and what we could do in January, and thinking what was going to be the best system for those players. And then look what happened in the second half of that year. Potentially, what we've ended up doing is try to reconstruct that. And what we've found is trying to, wing backs almost don't exist. If you look, Lasse Sorensen joined the centre midfield player, ended up being a really, really effective right wing back. We've looked at Rico, and when Michael came to the club, he was playing off the right in a 3-4-3. And we were scratching our heads at who can play left wing back, and watch him train, and the answer's staring in front of us is Rico's got all the attributes. Now when that goes well, and the team's really, really functioning, and we're on the front foot and we're dominating games and we're winning, it looks really different to when we're not. So Eric Ring, for example, was us trying to find an attacking type of right wing back when Tendai is probably not quite such a winger slash wing back. He'd be more of a fullback going into a wing back. But so in the end, what you find is there's a compromise all the time because you've got a fullback or a winger. So it's a really hard system to recruit to, and that's part of our way that we have to look at what's the best structure of the team, what's the best shape of the team for us going forward, where we learn all the lessons that we've learned over the last 12 months to give us the best chance of what we were talking about earlier, overachieving against budget, producing a team that you really enjoy watching and can really get behind, and can develop our best assets in the group as well. So that's all the conundrum for this jigsaw puzzle, and part of something you've highlighted there just shows like the complexity of it, and it's not an easy answer to give to a simple enough question.
Just a question for Michael really about this season. Strong start to the season. I think we had 23 points from the first 13.
Yep.
And we've doubled the points in the next 23.
Say that bit again, sorry.
We've doubled the points in the next 23 games.
I'm not great at maths, am I? I'll just give you a stats. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, obviously there's been a drop off in form, hasn't there? Quite clearly. What do you put that down to? How do we rectify it? And why, within that 23 game run, we had some very strong performances like Reading, Peterborough, Mansfield. We've not really been able to build on them. I'd just be interested in your thoughts on why drop in points total, and why haven't we been able to build on those really strong performances in certain games.
Yeah, I think that's probably been the biggest frustration in one way for the season. We probably had our really good run in early. So if you look at teams, some teams have a good run in and then don't, and we probably got we got out of the blocks very quick, didn't we? We were getting points on the board and we were flying, but it probably didn't look as well the way we wanted it to look, and some of the metrics weren't as good as we wanted it to be. So then we try and get some, like you say, have some good performances and try and get more dominant in games and more controlling games, and that comes through different ways. It comes through trying to do different things, and then we have to accept the opposition that can make the fight, right? So I think as the season's gone on, teams have changed quite a lot when they come to Sinsselbank. They come for a point rather than open up, and that makes it a bit more challenging sometimes for us to do that, and it makes it a bit more of a challenge to break down low blocks and people that don't want to play so much. So we've been really successful against the teams that have probably want to play and dominate the ball, and our game is good against those teams, and we're just searching for a way that how we can evolve it into the end of these last 10 games and into next season. So I think it's a combination of things. It can be, I think people probably forget that we're trying to look after players as well, like Lewis Monsma, and Tendai was playing as a centre half at Wrexham. We did really well that night, but we were on a 1-0 loss. But actually we played really well. I come back to, when I look at it, and I think my job is to be consistent on the ups and consistent on the downs, and really look at the performances and look at all the data and metrics together. It might have not been what we wanted, but we're still progressing, we're still trying to move forward. I think the challenge is, when you don't get the result, it can skew the narrative of what the game looked like. So we've had some brilliant performances this season where we've lost the game. And we've had some terrible performances where we've won the game. But that's the nature of football, isn't it? And that's what we're trying to improve all the time, where we can have both together, which is the performance and the result. And I think probably people see that in Stockport at home, Reading at home, where we've had the performance and the win.
Right, well I think that would be a very good time to end this evening, so I'm just sure we've all got hopes to go to. So first of all, I'd like to thank everybody on the Lincoln City Boy Band.